Hello, ladies. Are you noticing that as you get older, your periods become more and more irregular? Well, that's probably true. It's very important not to be afraid at this time, but just understand what's going on with your body. So, as we do get older, our body begins to make less and less estrogen. And I like to call estrogen, that hormone, I call it a woman's super hormone. It's like a superpower. It does lots of things for our body. But as that hormone begins to decrease, we will see changes in our body. But don't worry, it's really not a time for you to be very concerned about aging. It's really a time to get excited about what's to come so that you can live the best of your life at this time. Of course, when we were in our 20s, we had lots of energy. Our bodies were perfect almost. And as we get older, things change. But I will tell you that I will take wisdom and experiences over being in my 20s any day. And so just start with that mindset as your body begins to make these changes. And what I want to share with you today, what's that all about, is typically called perimenopause, which means around menopause. And I know that menopause gets a bad name, but don't worry. I am finding that as I am going through this transition, I'm actually beginning to enjoy it. And what I'm going to tell you today is some things I wish someone would have told me when I was in my 40s or even in my late 30s. But I want to share it with you so that you can maybe shorten the learning curve that I did not have an opportunity to experience. So, whenever we're going through this transition in life, what is happening is our body is making less eggs. And so it marks the ending of the reproductive time in our life where we can have children. But however, what I'd like to state, it may be the ending of the reproductive years, but it is the beginning of our productive years. And we can just really begin to enjoy our lives, spend more time taking care of ourselves. Self-care is very important during this time because I will tell you, it takes a little more energy and strategy to be healthy during this time than it did early on in our 20s. So I want to share with you some of the things that I've learned and tell you a little bit about my story. And probably in my mid 40s, I had some fluctuations in my period. I could count my periods like clockwork on the calendar in my 20s and 30s. I knew when it was coming. I knew how long it should last. I knew like how light it would be, on what days it might be a little heavier. I would know if I had a cramp here or there, why. And then as I began to get into my 40s, lots of things changed and my period was all over the place. There were times when it was very light. And then there was one instance where it was very, very heavy. And it was so heavy, I had to go into my OBGYN's office to get some testing done. And I remember that day of testing being a little scary because they were testing me for cancer. And thankfully, everything came back negative. And honestly, I've never had a really heavy period since then. But at that time, my estrogen levels were extremely high. And I just had a lot of bleeding on that week. So I am so thankful that there was nothing wrong at that time. But I share that so that you will see that it's just your periods can be up one day, down the next. 1 month, you have a regular period. Next month, you may have a period for 1 or 2 days. The next month, you can have 2 or 3 days of a very heavy period. But what I will say is it's very important if your period is changing that you just talk with your doctors just to make sure everything is okay. Once I found out everything was okay, I began to learn a little bit more about perimenopause and menopause. And there are some things I had to do. There were some changes I had to make in order to get through that transition time and feel my best and have a lot of energy. One of the things that I had to start looking more closely at is exercise. And I will say that I typically was very slim, skinny, in shape, small waist, snatched, as they like to say. However, as I got older, even though I did not eat different, I, of course, weren't exercising, but when I worked as a nurse, I would do anywhere from 10 to 20,000 steps a day. So I was moving quite a bit. My body began to change. And in changing, it wasn't just weight gain, but it was just the way my body's shape began to change. And there was honestly nothing I could do about it. It just kept going. My waist got larger, my breasts got larger, my hips got larger. And what I ended up doing a few years ago was getting a personal trainer, because I really didn't work out in the gym. I would go to the gym and it wouldn't be consistent. I could check all the boxes for my health except the exercise box. So I got a personal trainer. I began to work with the personal trainer 3 times a week. I began to do strength training, weightlifting, mostly machines, but some free weights. And I will say that 3 years later, I feel better. Do I look like I'm in a weightlifting contest? No, but I am much stronger and I have a lot better endurance now that I've worked out with a trainer. I only spent 1 year with the trainer. And the last couple of years, I have been consistently working out 3 days a week, strength training, and then moving my body in some way every day. So I would just say, first of all, it's very important to hone down on an exercise regimen, even if it's walking every day. Just getting up, moving your body, especially if you work in a sedentary career where you're sitting most of the time at a desk. The second thing I did when I got in my early 50s was I started on hormone replacement therapy. And I was really afraid to start on hormone replacement therapy at first because I had some questionable mammograms and ultrasounds. None of them were ever positive for breast cancer, thankfully, but I did have some questionable exams because I have dense breast. So I was very concerned about starting on hormone replacement therapy, but I had 2 friends that were taking hormone replacement therapy, and they were just raving about the results of it. And I thought, I'm going to give it a try. Well, the next issue I had was I couldn't find a doctor that would prescribe it in the area I lived in. So I had to do a lot of research, and I finally found a doctor, and he is absolutely amazing. And literally after about 3 weeks of being on an estradiol patch and progesterone at night, I was sleeping better. I had my life back. I was feeling a lot better. I almost felt like myself again. And I hadn't felt that way in quite a few years. I had energy. I was studying for a certification. I had postponed the certification exam like twice because I just couldn't retain the information. I had a lot of brain fog. And once I got on the hormone replacement, I took the certification within 3 months and passed it without an issue. So I know for a fact that my brain fog was very real. And so the hormone replacement therapy helped me. I would like to just encourage you to speak with your OBGYN and make sure you speak to a doctor that is trained in menopause and is open to talk to you about it and make you feel as though what you're going through, they understand, not they're trying to give you an antidepressant or tell you, oh, it's menopause, just deal with it. No. You don't have to just deal with it. There are things you can do. And if not hormone replacement therapy, there are other things you can do. So speak with a menopause trained OBGYN, and you can find them by going to a link that I'll place in the show notes below. And that really helped me find a doctor in my area. The other thing I had to do was I was very stressed and didn't know it. So I began to do some breath work, some mindfulness meditation, relaxation, and I had to learn how to get better sleep because that was another issue I had, was I was waking up throughout the night when I started in my early 50s. And so if you look at this video here where I talk about how to get good sleep, my sleep is pretty good. I do check my sleep data every day because my son gifted me a Sleep Number bed and it keeps up with my sleep data. And Last night was in the 80s, which is good. In the last few days, I was in the 70s, which is still pretty good. But I've been getting much better sleep because prior to relaxation, meditation, and doing some things to improve my sleep score was in the 60s. And so every day I woke up, I was really tired. So sleep is very important too. The other thing that I did last year was I did get a counselor, and she was amazing. She gave me strategies on stress management techniques, and that really helped me a lot. I was able to offload some things that I needed to talk to someone about in private with her, and she was just amazing. I spent about 2.5 months meeting with her on a weekly basis, and that probably was the number one thing that really helped me a lot. And then the last thing that I do without fail is there are certain supplements that I take every single day without fail. And my supplements, my doctor recommended them. And one of them is cod liver oil. The second one is vitamin D3 and K2. The third one is a probiotic. And there are some other supplements I take that I won't mention because they're specific to me and what I'm dealing with. And those I get from a functional medicine doctor. And they really have helped me a great deal with my gut health and with my energy and detoxification and all the things. So I will just want to encourage you to not think of this time in perimenopause and menopause as a time where you're aging or getting older. It really is a launching pad for you to enjoy the rest of your life with all the wisdom and all the things that you've learned throughout your life that you can get. You can have a much better life. Enjoy this time taking care of yourself. We can't take care of our families if we don't take care of ourselves first, and that's most important. So I hope you've learned something today about your irregular periods and what you can do to find out more about what's going on with your body and the strategies you can possibly implement to improve this journey that we call perimenopause and menopause and live your best life. Thanks for watching.